There are discoveries that rewrite history books, and then there are discoveries that shouldn't exist at all. In April 2022, construction workers in Kent made a find so impossible that experts are still trying to understand how it happened. What they pulled from the ground that day was a 400-year-old Elizabethan warship. But here's the thing that makes this story truly mind-bending. This ship wasn't found underwater. It was buried 300 meters inland in the middle of a quarry. The CEMEX construction team thought they were having an ordinary Tuesday morning. They were dredging for limestone aggregates in their Dungeness quarry, the same routine operation they'd performed hundreds of times before. The massive excavator bit down into the sediment and came back up with something that made absolutely no sense. Wooden planks. Massive, ancient wooden planks that had no business being buried in the middle of the English countryside. Foreman Dave Richardson later described the moment as surreal. The wood was clearly old, centuries old, and it was arranged in a pattern that suggested something much larger had once been whole. As more sediment cleared away, the impossible truth became undeniable. They weren't looking at random timber, they were looking at the skeleton of a ship. But this discovery gets stranger. The workers called Kent County Council, expecting maybe some historical society to come remove what they assumed were the remains of an old fishing boat. What arrived instead was an emergency response team from historic England, followed by marine archaeologists, timber specialists, and eventually camera crews from the BBC. Because what CEMEX had accidentally excavated wasn't just any old ship. The first clue came from the construction method. Wessex Archaeology's team, led by senior maritime archaeologist Nigel Nailing, immediately noticed something extraordinary about how this vessel had been built. Every single joint, every connection between the massive oak planks had been secured not with iron nails, but with wooden pegs called tree nails. This was a construction technique that marked the ship as incredibly ancient and incredibly valuable. Dr. Nailing had spent 20 years studying historic shipwrecks across Europe, but he'd never seen preservation like this. The ship's hull remained almost perfectly intact, with over 100 individual timber pieces still locked together exactly as they had been assembled 4 centuries ago. The English oak had been protected by layers of sediment that created an oxygen-free environment, essentially mummifying the entire structure. But the real revelation came when they began dendrochronological dating, analyzing the tree rings in the oak planks to determine exactly when those trees had been cut down. The results sent shockwaves through the maritime archaeology community. This ship had been built between 1558 and 1580 during the height of the Elizabethan era. They were looking at a vessel that had sailed during the same period as Sir Francis Drake's circumnavigation of the globe, the defeat of the Spanish Armada, and England's emergence as a global naval power.
The significance of this timing cannot be overstated. The 16th century represents one of the most revolutionary periods in naval history, yet almost no physical evidence of English shipbuilding from this era has survived. Until now, historians had to rely on written accounts, paintings, and educated guesswork to understand how these legendary ships were actually constructed. This Quarry ship represents the first complete Elizabethan hull ever recovered. The vessel measured approximately 60 feet in length, making it a medium-sized ship by Tudor standards, large enough for ocean voyaging, but small enough for coastal trading or military reconnaissance. The hull's design revealed sophisticated engineering principles that historians had only theorized about. The planks were fitted together with a technique called carvel construction, where each board sat flush against the next, creating a smooth outer surface that could cut through water with minimal resistance. What made this construction method remarkable was its precision. Each oak plank had been individually shaped and fitted with tolerances measured in millimeters. The wooden tree nails that held everything together had been driven through pre-drilled holes that aligned perfectly across multiple layers of timber. This level of craftsmanship required master shipwrights with decades of experience and access to tools more sophisticated than most people realize existed in the 16th century. But here's where this story takes its most mysterious turn. How does a 60-foot ship end up buried 300 meters inland? The current coastline at Dungeness lies well to the south of the Quarry site. For this vessel to have ended up where Cemex found it, one of two extraordinary things must have happened. The first possibility is that the ship was wrecked during the most catastrophic storm surge in recorded English history. Storm surges can push massive volumes of water far inland, and there are historical accounts of 16th century tempests that reshaped entire sections of the English coast. If such a storm struck while this ship was seeking shelter near shore, the surge could have carried it inland and then retreated, leaving the vessel stranded. The second possibility is even more remarkable. Geological surveys of the Dungeness area suggest that in the 16th century, the Quarry site might have been much closer to the water. The Romney Marsh region has been gradually expanding seaward over 1,000 years as rivers deposit sediment and human engineering projects reclaim land from the sea. If the coastline in 1580 was significantly different from today's shoreline, this ship might have been abandoned or wrecked in what was then a coastal harbor.
Dr. Sarah Lunt, a coastal geomorphologist brought in to analyze the site, discovered evidence supporting the second theory. Core samples from around the ship revealed layers of marine sediment mixed with freshwater deposits, suggesting the area had once been an estuary or sheltered inlet. Radiocarbon dating of shells and marine organisms in these sediment layers confirmed that seawater had regularly reached this location during the late 16th century. This means the ship likely didn't arrive through some dramatic disaster. Instead, it probably ended its working life in what was then a perfectly normal harbor, gradually settling into the mud as the coastline shifted and the sea retreated. Over 4 centuries, layer after layer of sediment buried the hull until it lay 15 feet below the surface, waiting for a construction crew to accidentally resurrect it. But the archaeological team discovered something else that transforms this from a simple shipwreck story into a mystery worthy of a detective novel. The ship didn't sink while fully loaded or operational. It was deliberately broken up. Evidence of this intentional dismantling was everywhere once researchers knew what to look for. The upper portions of the hull, the deck, masts, rigging, and superstructure had been systematically removed. Valuable items like iron fittings, anchors, and navigational equipment were completely absent. Even the ship's ballast stones had been taken. This vessel had been carefully stripped of anything useful before being abandoned. This discovery pattern is consistent with a common practice in the 16th century called breaking up. When ships reached the end of their useful lives, owners would beach them and salvage everything of value. The hull would be left to rot, or if the location was convenient, used as a foundation for coastal defenses or harbor improvements. What makes this particular case unusual is the exceptional preservation of the hull itself. The implications for maritime history are staggering. Anthony Firth, head of Marine Heritage Strategy at Historic England, called the find more significant than any Tudor shipwreck previously discovered. The reason for his excitement becomes clear when you consider how little physical evidence exists from this pivotal period in naval development. The famous Mary Rose, Henry VIII's warship recovered from Portsmouth Harbor, dates from the earlier Tudor period and represents a different class of vessel entirely. The Elizabethan ship from Dungeness offers the first opportunity to study construction techniques from England's golden age of exploration and trade. Every joint, every timber selection, every design choice provides insight into the technological innovations that allowed English ships to compete with Spanish galleons and Portuguese carracks for control of global trade routes.
Analysis of the wood itself revealed sophisticated forestry management practices. The oak trees used to build this ship were between 80 and 120 years old when felled, meaning they had been planted or protected specifically for shipbuilding purposes, sometime in the late 15th or early 16th century. This suggests a level of long-term planning in England's naval strategy that historians had not previously documented. The ship's construction also revealed evidence of Mediterranean influences in English shipbuilding. Certain joinery techniques found in the hull are identical to methods used by Venetian and Genoese shipwrights of the same period. This cross-pollination of shipbuilding knowledge provides concrete evidence of the technological exchange that fueled the age of exploration.
Perhaps most remarkably, the team discovered proof that this ship had been modified at least twice during its operational life. Patches in the hull showed different wood sources and slightly different construction techniques, suggesting the vessel had been repaired or upgraded over several decades of service. One section of planking came from trees that had been felled nearly 20 years later than the original construction timber. These modifications tell a story of a long working life for a vessel that might have participated in some of the most significant maritime events of the Elizabethan era. Ships of this size and construction were typically used for coastal trading, privateering against Spanish treasure ships, or carrying supplies to English settlements in Ireland and the New World. There's even a possibility that this particular vessel participated in the harassment of the Spanish Armada in 1588. The archaeological team made another discovery that adds a human dimension to this maritime time capsule. Hidden beneath the ship's keel, they found a collection of personal items that had been deliberately placed there during construction, a practice known as ship blessing or foundation sacrifice. These items included a leather shoe, several coins, and what appeared to be a small wooden carving of a religious figure. The coins provided additional dating evidence, but also revealed something unexpected about the ship's origins. While most of the coins were English, 2 were Spanish reales and 1 was a Flemish stuver. This mix of currencies suggests the ship was either built with international financing or had been involved in foreign trade from the beginning of its service life. The leather shoe, remarkably preserved by the same anaerobic conditions that protected the ship's timbers, was of a style worn by working sailors rather than officers or merchants. It had been heavily worn, with repairs visible in the sole, suggesting it had belonged to someone who spent years walking the deck of a working ship. The act of placing this shoe beneath the keel during construction represents a deeply personal ritual, probably performed by the ship's first crew as a blessing for safe voyages. Conservation of the ship presented unprecedented challenges. Unlike underwater wrecks that can be treated with established preservation techniques, this hull had been preserved in conditions no one had encountered before. The sediment that protected the wood for centuries had created a unique chemical environment that standard conservation methods couldn't address. A team of wood conservation specialists from York Archaeological Trust developed new techniques specifically for this project. They had to extract over 100,000 gallons of sediment-saturated water from the ship's structure, while gradually replacing it with polyethylene glycol to prevent the wood from cracking as it dried. The process took 8 months and required round-the-clock monitoring to ensure the timbers didn't collapse under their own weight. The most challenging aspect was preserving the ship's original shape. Unlike most archaeological finds, this vessel retained its three-dimensional structure, meaning conservators had to maintain the hull's curve and proportions while treating each individual plank. They constructed a custom-built support framework that held every timber in exactly the position where it was found, creating a full-scale wooden skeleton that will allow researchers to study the ship's design for generations. During the conservation process, researchers made additional discoveries that continue to reveal new information about Elizabethan shipbuilding.
microscopic analysis of wood samples revealed that the ship's builders had access to timber seasoning techniques that weren't documented in historical texts. The wood showed evidence of careful aging and treatment that would have made it more resistant to rot and shipworm damage. Even more significantly, the team found clear evidence that this ship had been built using mathematical principles that weren't supposed to exist in English shipbuilding until the 17th century. Precise measurements of the hull revealed proportional relationships between different sections that match mathematical ratios found in Renaissance architectural treatises. This suggests that English shipwrights were more sophisticated and better educated than previously believed.
The discovery has also revealed information about England's timber trade during the Elizabethan period. While the hull's primary structure was built from English oak, several repair sections used timber that microscopic analysis identified as coming from the Baltic region. This imported wood provides evidence of trade relationships and supply chains that extended far beyond England's borders, even for relatively small vessels like this one. But perhaps the most intriguing discovery came during final documentation of the site. Beneath where the ship's stern had rested, archaeologists found evidence of an earlier vessel. Fragments of planking and metal fittings that appeared to be even older than the Elizabethan ship. Radiocarbon dating of these fragments suggests they date from the late 15th or early 16th centuries, making them potentially even more significant than the main discovery. This earlier vessel seems to have been completely broken up, with only scattered pieces remaining. But those pieces suggest it was built using different construction techniques, possibly representing an earlier stage in the evolution of English shipbuilding. If this interpretation is correct, the Dungeness Quarry site might contain evidence of English naval development spanning over a century. The implications extend beyond maritime archaeology. This discovery has forced historians to reconsider assumptions about coastal geography, trade networks, and technological development during one of England's most important historical periods. The ship serves as a three-dimensional archive of information that no written document could provide. More discoveries may be waiting. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of the surrounding quarry area have identified at least 3 other anomalies that might represent additional shipwrecks or maritime structures. If these prove to be vessels from different periods, Dungeness could become one of Europe's most important maritime archaeological sites. The story of this Elizabethan ship continues to evolve. The fully conserved hull is now on permanent display at the National Maritime Museum, where visitors can walk around the complete structure and see exactly how Tudor shipwrights transformed raw oak trees into vessels capable of crossing oceans. Interactive exhibits allow people to explore the ship's construction techniques and imagine the lives of the sailors who once worked its decks. But the most remarkable aspect of this discovery might be what it reveals about the power of accident and preservation. For over 4 centuries, this ship lay waiting just 15 feet below a working quarry, protected by the same geological processes that had gradually moved the coastline away from it. If Cemex workers had dug just 20 feet to the left or right, it might have remained hidden for another 400 years. Instead, one routine morning in 2022, a construction crew accidentally opened a window into England's maritime past and pulled a Tudor warship back into the sunlight. In doing so, they proved that history's most incredible discoveries are often hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for the right moment to tell their stories. The Dungeness ship now stands as proof that the past is never as far away as we think, and that sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries happen when we're looking for something else entirely.